Okay, so good to see you today. Um,
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to speak and be on the wonderful podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Sure,
having me.
sure, no problem. So you are Amanda. Forgive me, the last name is difficult.
Harrinauth.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
And you work a lot with Special Olympics, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
So,
So you live in California?
yes, Northern California.
Awesome, wonderful, beautiful country there. Uh, so first, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm doing well, spending a lot of time writing poetry, and we actually just wrapped up having poetry night with the Special Olympics on Wednesday through Zoom. It was
Great.
so wonderful. We had 18 poets who signed up. So I got to open up poetry night with a poem that I wrote called Northern California Pride, which was written for the Special Olympics, and closed out the poetry night with my latest poem that I wrote called I Can't Breathe. So that was a lot of fun. It's my first time doing it, and I'm so happy that everyone was receptive to it.
Awesome. So I've actually worked. I used to be in Special Olympics in middle school, and I've well, let's see if we can see back here. I have a whole ton of medals, and
Oh, wow! Hey, look at that!
yeah, there's let's see, there's uh, 5 gold, 3 silvers, 3 bronzes, and a participation trophy. So yeah, I did basketball and track and field. Um,
Very
so
nice.
what sports do you do?
So I do bocce ball and bowling.
Great. I took bowling in community college, and the professor, I thought it was just going to be, we go, we bowl, whatever. But actually, the professor let us know about the long history of bowling. Turns out it goes back thousands of years to ancient Egypt. They've actually found bowling sets in Egyptian tombs,
Oh, wow.
and yeah. So,
I didn't know that.
so yeah, and I did standing long jump, softball throw, 50-yard dash, and some relays. I also, in one of my matches, I did basketball individual skills.
Mhm.
You know, and at the end of my day in my time in middle school, we had an athletic day where people came in, and we the whole graduating 8th grade class did an athletic day, and I wore all my medals. And let me tell you something, the kids in the normal teams, I'm putting air quotes around that, who they they uh they didn't get medals. They didn't get, genuine gold, silver, bronze
Right.
medals. We do, however. So yeah.
Right? That's what makes it the Special Olympics, because we are, hey, we're special, so we should get special prizes for trying our best.
uh, I actually think the term special is, I'm okay with Special Olympics using it because it's kind of grandfathered in, but
Yeah.
it does, the idea of special needs, I think the need to be treated like a decent human being regardless of disability is rather mundane and not special. I think the having being treated equitably is something that everybody should be welcome to. But I've also worked with VSA, which was done by Eunice Kennedy Shriver's sister, Jean Kennedy Smith, and VSA was basically to the arts as Special Olympics was to sports. So she and I actually met her, and when I met her, she gave me a standing ovation, which was pretty cool. But this is not about me. This is about you, and you are a poet. So what do you like writing about?
this is going to sound really, really generic, but I write about absolutely everything.
Okay, so you have come up with this video, I Can't Breathe, and you're big into promoting that, and I want to help you promote that. What's that about?
I Can't Breathe is, well, let me go ahead and give you a little bit of history on how I actually came up with it.
Sure.
So I am actually a life coach, and I wanted to reach out to my coaching community. There's a magazine called Worldwide Coaching Magazine, and I was like, oh, I was like, these people sound really, really cool. And I looked through it. It's a digital magazine, and I noticed that they cater to, I guess, business coaching, which that was something I wasn't trained in. You know, how to, you know, do things with business and helping
Yeah.
clients start business and all that stuff. I wasn't trained in that. I took a approach more of with ontology, which is the study of being, which was really, really cool and a lot of fun. So anyway, I reached out to Worldwide Coaching Magazine, and they do different topics every month. And this topic for July was dealing around how coaches would walk their clients through having to deal with grief and loss. So the editor comes up with the idea, how do you feel about what's going on recently with the Black Lives Matter movement, the recent killing of George Floyd? He said, how do you feel about that? And at that time, he didn't know that I was African American until I sent in my picture. So I was like, okay, let me go ahead and take on this challenge and come up with this really, really epic poem. Now, this was supposed to literally be a trial. It wasn't anything that was initially supposed to be promised.
Yeah.
So I, for whatever reason, had the words "I can't breathe" just echoing in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, you know, kind of eerie because, you know, you don't want to sit there and promote something like, oh, I can't breathe. So I started writing out this I can't breathe piece. Actually, you know what? Instead of talking about it, would you care if I actually performed it for you now?
I don't care at all. You can do it.
Thank you.
Sure.
I can't breathe. What worries you about this? A question I often ask my clients to dig deep down into their soul. Fallen black and brown lives everywhere. No one seems to care about the impact this epidemic has. It'll leave you breathless. I can't breathe. I thought the US was supposed to be the land of the free, but I am not by just being me. I come from a Black mother and an East Indian father. I thought I would never have to question, does my life matter? I can't breathe. When I turn on the TV and see millions of protests in the street and around the world. The role of a coach, they're supposed to help clients live their dreams. When a client comes to me and says, "Coach, my dream is just to live," pain echoes in my heart for the fallen souls, my brothers and sisters who have done nothing wrong. Jogging, sleeping, buying a soda. I can't breathe when I hear of the deaths of the young men and young women. The only crime committed seems to be the color of their skin. I took a knee for justice of my brothers and sisters, George, Brianna, Trayvon, Ahmaud, Oscar, and so many others. It hurts my heart that I can't breathe is a nationwide quote. Everyone should have the right to live. I can't breathe.
Very good. Very good. Very moving, very powerful. Black lives do matter. And it's I should say we have bad people out there who are responding by saying all lives matter. And I want to say, yes, all lives do matter, but you don't have to say that. You have to say Black Lives Matter, because the people aren't paying attention to that. White people have had enough power forever, and it's just so we need to say. And also, of course, the disabled population has had a very tough time with law enforcement. Deaf people, for example, who get misunderstood by the cops and shot, and people with autism, especially people who are non-speaking, and right. So you had mentioned being a life coach. What does that entail? What do you do?
Okay, so as I said, so life coaches, I think of it as partnering with a client to help them achieve what their dream is. It's literally a partnership. It's not, I'm a life coach and I'm going to come in and tell you what to do. It's not that at all. I'm a life coach and I'm going to come in, help you reach and realize what your potential is. Now, as I've said, we've had plenty of life coaches out there who study business, health and wellness, and even autism. But I have a slight advantage for the coaching industry because we don't see many coaches themselves who are actually on the autism spectrum or with disabilities, period. So I'm on the autism spectrum. Also, I have issues with my vision. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty unique in that case. So as of right now, I work with people on the autism spectrum, and I work alongside clientele with other intellectual disabilities, so Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. I was actually fortunate enough probably about a month ago to work with the clinical director of the Healthy Athletes program for the Special Olympics. And we actually got the opportunity to do a mindfulness workshop. So I'm literally walking them through breathing techniques, and I'm walking them through just various techniques that I had learned in just my training, not only as a coach, but I also like to do extra research. So I started looking up all these other coaches who learned all these various skills. And I was like, I can incorporate some of this into what the Special Olympics is doing. So it has been so cool. And like I said earlier, when I was reaching out to these various life coaching magazines, they hadn't heard of a coach actually on the autism spectrum working with other clients who were members of the Special Olympics. So my mentor told me that I was paving the way for others. So I was really happy.
I think mentorship is very important. I'm a member of the National Disability Mentoring Coalition. I've actually been inducted into their Hall of Fame. I will certainly keep you in mind for a submission, because you do a lot of wonderful work. And so there's mentoring is so powerful. And I have been at this since 1994. When I was in third grade, I gave a speech to the Lieutenant Governor of Colorado. So I'm incredibly old hat with disability advocacy, but I'm still learning all sorts of things. And I'm not afraid to say that I have like 3 to 5 mentors right now who I still learn things from, and it's never be afraid to learn. We see these unfortunate people, with the masks who say they don't want to wear masks because they're perfect. And I'm going to say nobody's perfect. We can all learn, and so with that, I am different from there are a lot of autistic activists who are a lot more extreme than I am, and they always focus on like negativity and complaints and things like that. You seem like a very happy person. You seem like a positive, upbeat person. What are your views on that, on being positive?
Um, so what I'll say about being positive is that I was raised in a home that is very centered on faith and Christ centered. So I turn inward quite a bit to my faith and reading the word. And I have a pretty, I guess, speckled past or checkered past when it comes to disability and illness. I've had, over my 30 years, I've had 21 brain surgeries. I've had 10 eye surgeries. I had to get a cancerous tumor removed. I want to say probably one of the easiest surgeries that I've ever had was getting my wisdom teeth removed. And that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So I've been through a lot in a short amount of time. I believe you and I are around the same age. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm 34. Just turned
Okay.
34 a few days ago.
Okay, I'll be
Help
31.
me, I'm old. Listen, people older than me say, Alec, you're not that old. And I'm like, listen, when I was born, we thought there were 9 planets in the entire solar system, all of the, in the entire universe, all of them were in this solar system, and one of them was Pluto, So, the world is constantly changing, and age, while you can say it's just a number, it does make it, time passes, it makes a difference.
Right. Yeah.
So you have mentioned wishing to speak about the impact of Special Olympics in your life. For me, it proved a place for inclusion at a very, very, very tough time in my life. And it gave me just this wonderful, magical feeling of joy. What has Special Olympics done for you?
So I joined Special Olympics back in 2018, and it was later on in the year. So let me just back up a little bit. I was actually recovering from retinal detachment surgery. I have retinopathy of prematurity. So the retina will detach, and it can, when it detaches, you essentially lose some of your vision, which was going on in this case when it happened back in 2018. And at that time, as I was recovering from it, my mom found an an article in the newspaper that said one of the local high schools was going to have a track meet for the Special Olympics. So she forced me to go to that meeting. I was excited, but then again, not really. I had just had eye surgery. I was, feeling nauseous, a little bit depressed about what was going on in my life at that time. So I really didn't want to go and watch a whole bunch of kids run. It was hot out. But as I watched those kids run around the track, my heart opened and I literally just fell in love. And I said, what do I have to do in order to do this? So I printed out my application, filled it out, had to wait maybe a couple of months for everything to be cleared. And the director emailed me at that time and said, you're clear, you're ready to go. But it was towards the end of the year, September. The only thing they had available at that time was bowling. I stink at bowling, or at least I stank at bowling when I was a kid. Because my vision was so bad, I could never see the pins. how the heck am I going to go ahead and participate in bowling? And again, it was a couple of weeks before the tournament, or maybe about a week or so before the tournament. The tournament was in November. I had eye surgery again a couple days prior to that. So I had to go to the tournament with my eye patch on. How the heck are you going to go ahead and play with an eye patch on?
You
But I
could be
did
the
it.
pirate, put a hook on your hand and just the pirate routine, No, seriously, I had a time when I was doing a Special Olympics swim meet, and they had donuts in the lobby, and I gorged myself on donuts right before diving into the pool. I failed horribly. You're not supposed to eat before you swim. So yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So you had your eye patch on, and you're at the tournament, and it was in November.
Yeah, and this was my first time like ever competing in a tournament, and I know that for the Special Olympics, I think they reserved about 40 lanes for all of the athletes to go ahead and compete and play. And I also didn't realize that they structure it like an actual competition. Like, we're alternating lanes.
Yeah, there are
And
heats. There are heats. You're ranked by skill level. It's real serious stuff.
right. So you're literally just not competing just to have fun. You are, but you're competing to get gold medals, like you said.
Yeah,
So, this was my first time. I was, not doing so well at the actual like tournament practices. Like, I was like coming in last and third to last, and just not having so much fun because some of the athletes I was bowling against, they were bowling in like the 250 range and everything, and I was like, oh, this is gonna stink, and I'm not gonna be doing that well. I ended up getting a gold medal. I mean, excuse me, not
yeah,
a gold medal, not to. I ended up getting a gold medal for my second bowling competition, but
yeah,
for the first one, I ended up getting silver.
yeah.
So I just remember, woohoo! I got my medal, and then I went home and fell asleep because I was still nauseous from the medicine.
Yeah, yeah. I had a stroke some years ago, and like I
Mm,
told Tony when I had my interview with him yesterday, I had brain surgery as well. They did it endoscopically. They didn't have to open up my head. They stuck in a catheter through a hole in my groin, and then I could feel this tube warming around in the folds of my brain. And I asked the surgeon, "Is that what I'm feeling?" And he said, "Yes, now shut up." That's about as serious as my surgery has gotten. There was a very real chance of rendering me brain dead at that point. But
wow.
it's me. I'm filled with like comic relief, even where it doesn't belong. So you so Special Olympics has had a big impact. So if you recently, Special Olympics wasn't always integrated with the everyday population. Now they've got this Play Unified thing. What's your
Right.
point of view on that?
Play unified. I think play unified. I think that's pretty awesome. Because I guess we'll just call them able-bodied individual will understand what it's like to play with somebody with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and autism. And I think that really does creates a shift to the human heart for both of the players. I've never participated in Play Unified, but it's
Yeah,
pretty awesome from what I've seen. I
when you're
spend.
yeah,
Go ahead.
go on. No, you go ahead. It's all about you.
I've seen interviews on YouTube, and I was like, this is pretty cool. I think the Special Olympics overall, just as like an organization, it was wonderful for Eunice Kennedy Shriver to create such a loving space for quote unquote misfits of society to feel like they belong. And then, of course, her son, Tim Shriver, to go ahead and take it and turn it into something much larger while still keeping the mission for everyone to be included. That's freaking phenomenal.
I can tell you that if Play Unified had existed when I was younger, like when I was in middle school, it would have decreased bullying by so much because people would understand each other and things like that. And the idea of and the idea that people who don't understand those with disabilities, the level of understanding has gone up tremendously with Play Unified. So I'm all in favor.
I agree with you.
Let's see. You've mentioned that you work with companies. Are these sponsorships, or do you work for them for publicity, or like Bank of America and Apple, for example?
Yeah, so let me go ahead and clarify a couple of things. So there are several companies that sponsor the Special Olympics. Apple is not one of them, but we have Bank of America, Chevron, Raley's, and several other companies that are collective partners along with the Special Olympics. So I am a global ambassador for the Special Olympics. The global ambassador, we are the voices of the Special Olympics. So one of the things that we do is we give speeches to these organizations and these partners that are along with the Special Olympics. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I found a list of all of the corporate partners. And I was like, okay, I know we're quarantine or shelter in place right now, but I want to see how many of these companies I can speak for. So right now I'm in the process of working out some details to actually go ahead and give a talk at Bank of America, the corporate level for the San Francisco branch. So I'll definitely keep you updated on what happens with that.
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's very
and
neat.
I know one of the coaches that I know works for Apple. So I'm definitely going to go ahead and get my hands dirty with that and see what can come up or come out of getting to do a presentation with Apple.
I was when I was an APD intern in 2011. One of their big fat the biggest sponsors was MEF, Mitsubishi Electric America Foundation, and so I get the internship comes and goes, and like the next year I get this invite from the head of the foundation. He says, I'm going to fly you to Huntington Beach, California, put you in a hotel by the Pacific Ocean, and you'll speak to our corporate conference over a couple of days. And what my favorite part of it was at the end, I actually took off my shoes and socks and waded in the Pacific for a bit, and then I walked on the very famous Long Pier, and I got something which may gross you out, but I got a huge anchovy pizza. Yeah. Anyway, so that was the corporate sponsorships really open, and speaking engagements really open a beautiful, wonderful world. You got to be careful about what companies stand for, by the way. For example, there are a handful of companies I would not speak for if they paid me $1 billion. It's
Right. No, I don't blame you. So I'm again working closely with who's already partnered with the Special Olympics, and then just kind of letting that lead elsewhere. So I'm just gonna kind of go through my list
right.
of sponsorship for the Olympics, and then kind of see where I can go from there.
So if you don't mind me asking, what was it like growing up with these multiple disabilities?
So, growing up vision impaired, when you said you were bullied for your disability, that struck a chord in me because I was bullied for being vision impaired. And for me, growing up with very thick glasses, and I had glasses and braces all at the same time, but my teeth came out very nice. But for kids in the special education class, I would get made fun of
Hmm.
by them because they knew for whatever reason that I was different. And not finding out that I was autistic until the age of 26, I mean, you can't really grow up with something that you don't know that you have.
Right.
You can feel different all you want, but we're not medical experts. So until you get a confirmed diagnosis that something is quote unquote wrong with you, it's all up in the air from there. But honestly, uh, growing up was difficult, especially in academic environments and
Mhm.
academic settings, because I would be really behind my peers. What would take my peers work that would take them about 20 minutes, you go ahead and you double that time for me. I would have to take a lot of my classwork home because I wasn't able to finish it.
And then the homework builds up too, and it's just
Yeah, no, the homework builds up, and then you find yourself getting extremely frustrated. In fact, at one point, I was the only vision impaired person in my special education class. And then as I got older, there were maybe about 3 or 4 of us in the entire school, but the other 2 guys that I was with, or the other three guys that I was with, they were all in general education classes. So here I am alone, special education classes, and these guys, they were nice, but they couldn't relate to it.
Okay, so you just revealed something to me. See, I had like one or two special education study halls a day, but I would also be in general education classes. I'd take the regular, PE, social studies, science, etc. And you just uh, um, my parents fought so effing hard for me to be included in general education, despite the
Yeah,
fact that I'm 34. Having a kid with autism in general education at the time was unheard of.
right.
So you just mentioned that you were in special education classes. The whole way through. How how'd that work?
So when I got to, in elementary school, it was self, I guess you refer to them as self-contained classes. Self-contained classes. When I got to middle school, I got to do an elective class. My fourth period class was an elective class. I don't even remember what class it was, to be honest. And I also got to do another home economics class, which was a mix of general education and special education students. But other than the elective courses, I was in special ed, and supposedly we were doing the same work as our general education peers. We were just doing it at a much slower pace.
And I do have to say, remember, if you've learned about history, American history. Um, uh, First, what we had with African American population was segregation,
Right.
where the dogma was officially, and I'm putting air quotes again, separate but equal. But then what they had with Brown versus Board of Education is they said separate is inherently unequal. And that's
Right.
my point of view on special ed as well. When you're taking any population out of what's considered the norm, it's going to be unequal, unfortunately. You know.
Yeah.
So funding is a big thing for special education, and I actually want to run an idea by you. In my high school, I took an elective in senior year that was an elective in my school, and I have not heard of another school that has anything like it. I think it should be required for people, not just around this country, but around the world. It was called Living on Your Own, and they taught you about family dynamics. First day, they had the students take surveys home for their parents to fill out. The parents would have to ask, what would happen if your kid were to come out of the closet, or if your kid were to come home pregnant or having gotten someone pregnant? What would what would happen if this and that happened in your life?
Right.
They taught opening a bank account. They taught grocery shopping strategies. They taught childcare and child development and stages of life, all stages of life. And around Thanksgiving, we took advantage of the food lab next door, and we made a Thanksgiving feast for the whole class. And it was and it was actually quite fun. But it only occurred to me afterwards that it was a very rare class, and that most schools don't have something like that. I mean, this was, I lived in Buffalo, New York, where people would move into absolutely horrid living conditions.
Mm.
Number one, because some of them didn't care, but number two, because they didn't know what they were supposed to look for in a proper apartment, for example, or they didn't know how to open a bank account because they had never even considered it. Uh, what this life skills education had this stigma, even in my school, as being for kids in special ed only, but actually everyone benefited from it. What's your point of view on life skills education?
Yeah. No, so the home economic class that I took, it was one of the elective courses where we were integrated with general education students. We were all kind of learning the same thing. So we were learning cooking skills, we were learning banking skills, we were learning,
Yeah.
yeah, we were all doing it together. It wasn't, let's throw all the kids with autism, for instance, in this one class and hope they make it. All of us were learning it. It was one of my favorite classes, and I think they needed to teach more of it, because we had quarters back then where we only did something for 9-10 weeks, and then we would move on to another class. So we really only got to do it like for the first part of the year.
Yeah, we had units that were divided into a week or a couple weeks, and at the end of each week, we had a guest speaker come in, and like we had sex ed counselors come in to speak. We had people on the LGBTQ community, which this was, mind you, like the year 2003, 2004, and not everyone was as accepting as they are today. And we had people coming to talk about adoption. In one particularly moving instance, the teacher couldn't find anyone to talk about suicide, so she talked about how her mother had committed suicide. And
Mm.
but one of the most powerful, moving moments was when they got this guy in to talk about AIDS. He had
Yeah.
AIDS, and he mentioned how he was on 20 medications, and how he
Right.
had to have half of his brain removed due to infection. And and everybody was absolutely stunned, including myself. Then I asked him two questions. We had a question period at the end of each speaker, and I asked him, first of all, about how long do you think you have? And he said that he would be dead within the year. And
Hmm.
then my second question was, can I give you a hug? And I did. So that was, this was, that was some moving stuff. I think the guest speakers can be very important. And of course, now we've reached the portion where you're a guest speaker, and you're doing some really wonderful work. So I want to thank you for that. Were there any more thoughts on that, or should I go to the next question?
We can move on.
Yeah. Okay. There's one question I ask everybody who I interview, no matter what. I am very much involved in disability and creativity. There are disabled creators of all kinds, whether they be speakers or artists or writers or set designers, hairstylists, you name it, CGI people. People with disabilities have not been included nearly as much as we should have with the entertainment industries. Um, what are your points of view on getting people with disabilities involved in creative industries?
I I think that first of all, people with disabilities need to have such a resilience when it comes to rejection. And what I mean by that is that so I'm an artist. I'm a poet. When I was first starting out, not even 5 years ago, I had somebody that I didn't even really know. At that time, I was seeking out testimonials for my very first book, Legally Blind Letters from Amanda. So this professor who was teaching some type of disability classes
Mhm.
at whatever university said, this is not poetry, these are just sentences. Yeah,
Well,
I saw the eye roll because I was
it's
like,
it's it's
what?
not just about the form they take; it's about the sentiments behind them. You know, like somebody. So they were. I went to a local restaurant and they were playing a bunch of country songs, and then they played some John Prine. And I'm like, John Prine isn't even remotely country. And then the waitress behind the counter, the barista says, yeah, but it sure sounds like it. And I'm like, but listen to what he says. None of it is the same sentiment as country music. It's not just about how about how you say it. It's what you're saying. So you have a very good point here.
Yeah, I I think that creativity is, as you already know, it takes many forms, whether it be movies, music, poetry, art. Like I will never understand any artwork that was particularly done by Picasso. I've seen some of his work and I'm like, what am I looking at? But to somebody who is a trained artist, a trained poet, or excuse me, painter, or somebody who just spends their time going to art shows to observe these types of things, and somebody who has studied painting and that type of art, they'll understand it. Just because I don't understand it doesn't mean that it isn't art.
Yeah.
Just because this person I was telling you about didn't understand what I was trying to say doesn't mean that it isn't art.
Yeah. So there have been a lot of autistic artists throughout time. Uh, Vincent van Gogh is, by several people's metrics, including possibly my own, the greatest artist who ever lived. He was doubtlessly autistic. You know, there's Picasso may have been. Salvador Dali certainly was. With the
Mm-hmm.
melting clocks and the eggs and things like that. Um, uh, we've been in creativity forever, and we want to make sure that people know we're out there, because I mean, you know, like in films, for example, when people hire for a disabled role, they often don't hire a disabled actor, and we'll never get noticed if we don't get a job, you know.
And yeah, I think that is a whole different conversation, but I'm willing to
Let's
have
have
it
it.
with you briefly. um, so I finally saw Rain Man, I want to say about a year ago.
Oh God.
And that's Dustin Hoffman, is that correct?
Yeah, it's really stereotypical and ancient, you know.
Yeah. Um, so to kind of bring things into the present, one of my favorite shows is The Good Doctor.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's Dr. Sean Murphy is portrayed by Freddie Highmore, who is not on the autism spectrum. But I think he's cute, so I think he does a wonderful job. But had they actually hired somebody with autism, which they have been known to do, they've done, I want to say, a couple of episodes where the patients that he was treating was actually on the spectrum, and so that's really cool. But to add to what you were saying, I think that in some cases that the actor doesn't really understand what it is to have a disability, because they're reading literature, they're watching videos, they're watching documentaries of how these people with intellectual disability or autism or these other disabilities behave. You're an actor, you're trained to mimic other things.
Hmm.
So, have you seen the movie Riding the Bus with My Sister?
No, but one of the best autism portrayals, granted by someone who wasn't on the spectrum, that I've seen in film. A couple years ago, they came out with a Power Rangers film,
Mhm.
and Billy actually was on the spectrum, and they did that very, very
Mhm.
well, in my opinion. Uh, of course, I've written extensively on the first autistic superhero from Marvel Comics. And, you know, it's so funny we're talking about this today, because this morning my colleague sends me an email, says that at San Diego Comic-Con, there was a panel of, once again with the air quotes, experts talking about autism and creativity. Not a single one of them had autism, you know, and it was all about basically what they perceived as the state of autism and creativity. Meanwhile, last year in October, I actually myself and my mentee gave a talk on autism and creativity, and we both have autism. So there's this disability motto that people have: nothing about us without us. And so meanwhile, San Diego Comic-Con just had a massive panel of people without autism talking as supposed authorities on the state of autism and creativity. Meanwhile, I was having this panel last year about that, as you know, people with autism actually, you know, it's difficult when you know, it's so funny, you make a speech about us, but you're not bringing us to the table, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So earlier this year, actually in April for Autism Awareness Month, I actually got to do a talk with Tura University, and I got to sit on a panel with autism experts, and these are persons who, you know, study autism. They're all doctors, and that's what they study. But perhaps one of the most moving parts of this panel was they got to talk to me as somebody as being on the autism spectrum, which I thought was really cool. I
Yeah.
read one of the first poems that I actually had ever written was called Dear Autism. And actually, if you don't mind, Do you mind
Would
if
you
I
like
actually
to?
read that one
Would you
now?
like to? I'd like you to. Please do.
Yeah, let's do it.
And we can close this out with this because we've been meeting for about an hour now, and it would be a good thing to end our session.
All right. Dear Autism. Dear Autism, how are you today? There's so many things that make you great. There's so many things that I want to say. I wish I can control you better, keep you at bay. Dear Autism, why did you trigger me? I was just trying to be his friend. Instead, you made him frighten me. Dear Autism, it was just a hug. Instead of embracing it, you made me run. Dear Autism, why did you put me through this? I wanted to be his friend and not question the friendship. Dear Autism, one final thing. To protect me from him, to keep me safe, he decided to no longer be my friend. Regretfully, the girl that wishes we could have been friends.
Yeah. Friendship is difficult when you're on the spectrum. I did not have a genuine friend until I turned 25, at least. A friend from the normal perception. And then I kind of discovered a two-phase process. Hang out with people in common interest groups, and then have the cojones to ask them if they want to hang out with you on their downtime, you know. And that's I'm friends with all kinds of people. My very best friend locally is actually like 30 years older than me. Well, 20 years older than me, and she's a mother, and she's but I think that with autism, it's good to take pride in your insanity. To be loopy and take pride in it. I wanted to thank you very much. Did you have any other things you want to share?
I just think that those of us with disabilities, I really feel that we're going to be at the forefront of discussions one day. But that can only happen if we advocate for ourselves. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I'm so grateful for being a global ambassador is that no one within like the Special Olympics has ever had to say, come on, Amanda, do you want to go ahead and do this event? Because usually I'm already like up and running and rearing to go. Like I'll literally ask them, what can I do? Like what literally is the next thing I can do for you guys to get my message out there. Like they don't even have to really ask me. I'll send them stuff, whether it's poetry, whether it's an interview that I've just done for them to promote. So you have to be super enthusiastic about your mission, and this is my mission.
Well, thank you. Thank you for pursuing your mission. You're wonderful. It was great talking with you today.
Absolutely.
Okay, you take care, okay?
Take care.